For centuries, this land has waged a fierce battle against monsters from the depths. And lacking the crude, raw power of the monster, humanity constantly found itself at a disadvantage. That is why this small squad is now completely trapped, surrounded by a crowd of such creatures. Their leader asked himself whether they could survive at all in this desperate clash. Just as the monster lunged forward, its huge jaws snapped shut with a terrifying sound, and suddenly a divine decree descended, which would change the very course of their history. From the chaos erupting around the mysterious figure in a robe, a new power burst forth too. And on that very day, humanity finally received an incredible gift: magic. With just a simple gesture, they could unleash the destructive forces of the elements, and suddenly a young mage appears as if it were meant to be and calmly tells the squad that the threat has already been overcome. The squad commander stands, unable to believe his eyes, shocked that the monsters are already defeated, but later that same young mage froze in shock upon hearing that he was being expelled from the team. His leader recognizes Ryan's incredible magic, but considers him unfit for underground law. He taught him that cooperation is absolutely necessary for these dangerous missions. But Ryan responds hotly, "I did not become a magician just to be polite to others." He recalls his difficult past. Back then, the very thought that he could become a mage seemed impossible. He considered himself too clumsy and slow for any physical activity, until a mysterious mentor whispered to him that none of his so-called weaknesses mattered at all. He explained that with the power of magic, he could achieve everything he ever wanted. After 3 years, although he became strong enough to handle dangerous missions on his own, suddenly someone approaches him, recognizing him as a famous genius mage. And this new team says that their underground mission desperately needs his power. Their stated goal seemed simple, just to remove a few lower-level monsters, but they also whispered a tempting rumor about a hidden treasure nearby. And only Ryan realized too late that what they really wanted was not his strength at all. They wanted only one thing from him: to become bait for this incredibly powerful monster. Ryan realizes these new enemies are of a completely different level, not like before. He understands his former group dropped everything and fled at that very moment they saw that there was no treasure here. Bitter and painful truth that fills him with absolute burning rage. Having promised never to expect anything from others again, he steels his resolve to go into battle. He decides that he will defeat this alone, make everyone acknowledge his strength, whether they like it or not. Suddenly something hits him with incredible, stunning force. He lies on the ground, stunned and confused, not understanding why he suddenly found himself here, until he looked down and saw a huge bleeding wound stretching across his shoulder. A sudden shock from the injury completely paralyzed him with fear. The monster spoke as if amazed that Ryan had blocked a blow that should have been fatal. As if it was interested in his skills, seeing in this a rare opportunity to talk to a human, asking Ryan if he would show that mighty magic once more. A smaller creature nearby mocks him, sensing his complete and absolute ignorance. Ryan, stammering, tries to explain that his magic requires 2 hands, which he can no longer use, and the monster wonders why doesn't he just use magic to regrow them, and Ryan finds this complete nonsense, shouts that such powerful magic cannot exist. The strange creature froze silently for a moment, watching his despair grow. Ryan explains that for a mage such an injury is a death sentence. And at that moment of despair, a chilling truth dawns on him. This monster says that the exchange brought incredible knowledge for its research. There were rumors that the power of magic directly depends on how many fingers you have. What would make a creature with 4 arms, similar to him, incredibly powerful? Now this monster Kevil decided to try magic himself. The Kevil simply grabs Ryan, who helplessly struggles to break free from the monster's powerful grip. And our guy panicked, demands to know where they are taking him, and they find themselves in a huge hall filled with treasures, which Kevil calmly calls his home. Ryan froze in amazement, seeing such an exquisite room hidden so deep underground. And the smaller monsters grimly declare that strangers will never be allowed here. Then Kevil unexpectedly bandages Ryan's wound with his own bandages to stop the bleeding. Seeing a chance, Ryan offers to teach the monster magic but sets one condition. It was assumed that with 4 arms Kevil could perform regeneration magic. And he asks the creature, in exchange for lessons, heal my hand. The monster listens carefully to the proposal, considering whether such a powerful spell is really possible. Everything is very simple. Ryan gives knowledge and Kevil gives power. But Ryan is already sharpening an escape plan. As soon as he recovers, he will instantly teleport away. He knows that running away now is pointless on the surface. Due to the injury, he will be powerless. Just the thought of losing magic drags him back into a powerless past. To his surprise, Kevil agreed to the deal and called it an excellent idea. Seeing that Ryan's healing would be undeniable proof of magic's incredible potential. Kevel was filled with admiration at the very thought and immediately wanted to try casting spells. Ryan instantly put it out, explaining that it is not so simple here. He says that magic is a serious discipline studied through strict theory and hard practice. It seems Kevel understood this and agreed to start their lesson from the very beginning. Ryan breathed a sigh of relief at the monster's unexpected obedience, recalling how he had just barely escaped death. Kevel begins to deliver the first lesson about natural energy and the role of fingers and opposite his new student, Ryan sits confirmed that the theory is correct. Then he prepares for the demonstration, energetically explaining what can be done with just 5 fingers. And with one simple gesture, he shows Kevel how to make a nearby stone hover in the air. He continues the lesson and explains that he can also make the object bigger. And the more fingers, the exponentially more powerful and diverse magic opens up. This makes Ryan count the possibilities. He realizes that his forearms can possess incredible power. He was dizzy with the thought of the cosmic scale of what Kevel could achieve. He understood, to teach restoration magic, he needed a real start. Kevel interrupts him and proudly shows off an incredibly swollen sandwich. Ryan scolds him for training without permission, insisting everything must be done step by step and properly. Kevel simply says he was worried that there might not be enough food. At that moment, Ryan realized something shocking about the strange actions of the monster. He froze, staring at the giant piece of meat, while Kevel asks what is wrong. Ryan tells him to wait, feeling that the monster is deeply pondering something, and Kevel confirms he thinks to leave our guy in suspense for a moment. The monster then muttered to Ryan, "You don't have to do this alone." He generously gave his strength and mind so that Ryan, as an invited guest, could use them. Ryan, stunned by the unexpected offer, confusedly wonders if he should really rely on this creature, and Kevel lifts the piece of meat and hints that it can be used to restore the hand. Our guy instantly understood. They need a catalyst for the spell to work properly, and Kevel smiled. He has already sent his minions to find the necessary things. Ryan worries, did these tiny creatures even understand such a complex task? Kevel seems not to worry at all. He says he will just experiment with the meat for now. Before they begin their magical research, Kevel decides it's time to eat. When they sat down at the table to eat, Ryan continued studying his notes. He enthusiastically presents a new theory, a mixture of plant growth magic and blood-clotting magic. Just as Kevel asks if he has found at least some promising lead for the regeneration spell. A week later, the minions return with a giant bone, hoping it might become the perfect catalyst. While Ryan snorted, recalling the bitter truth, no rescue team ever came for him. In his notes, numerous failed attempts to create a restoration spell. In a moment of despair, he crushes the failed theories in his hand. But he decides those past failures no longer matter to him. Because teaching Kevel, he himself has become much stronger. His goal remains the same, to heal his hand, return to the surface, and make everyone recognize him. But at that very moment, an invisible force suddenly grabbed Kevel from behind, and Ryan turns around, asks what's wrong, and goes outside to figure it out. The voice of Kevel, filled with anxiety, urgently warns him, under no circumstances move from your place. The invisible invader holds Kevel's subordinates and says that they are much cuter than their master. Kevel stands before the invader, recognizing her only as Jolie. Suddenly, a new monster appears like a jester and cheerfully exclaims that it has finally found him. She smiles and says she is surprised to see him alive. She thought he was dead. Kevel, now in a different form, coldly tells her that this is not her territory. But she just playfully hovers in the air, ignoring the warning, and enthusiastically praises his attitude. She says she was madly worried about him because Kevel is much weaker than her. She narrows her eyes suspiciously and asks what exactly he has been doing all this time. Till her gaze stops on Ryan and she asks if he has found a new toy. Kevel's face instantly darkened. He is clearly angry at her presence and questions. Ryan's eyes suddenly widened. He finally understood everything about this new monster. Suddenly he realizes this strange clown monster could become the key to his healing spell. The jester monster finally notices him, shocked that there is a human in Kevel's lair. Ryan immediately pointed at her, threatening to kill if she did not heal his hand. Kevel froze in shock at Ryan's sudden and extremely aggressive demand. The jester simply looks at the boy with intrigue and at his bold, unexpected threat. Her little minion panics, believing that Ryan's threat is completely real. But Ryan just laughed and admitted that it was just a bluff to get her attention. Dolly simply hovers in the air, completely unmoved by his prank, and quietly hums some melody to herself. She sighed with slight irritation and finally turned all her attention to Ryan. Suddenly, Kevel grabs Ryan from behind and accuses him of letting the villain escape. Our guy is completely stunned by this accusation. He is shocked that he is being blamed for her appearance. Kevel coldly reminds Ryan that he was clearly told not to go outside. Jolly smiles ominously from afar, as if saying that Kevel just had to kill that person for his blood. Kevel insists this is his territory and only he will decide about Ryan. She jokingly calls him stubborn, then instantly disappears, asking if there is any blood left, and as soon as the gesture vanished, Kevel pressed Ryan to the ground with just one foot. Ryan's eyes widened with fear. The pressure of Kevel's foot seemed incredible. He clenches his teeth in pain and finally understands what real danger he is in. Kevel lifts his foot and tells Ryan that staying here is too dangerous for him. He orders our guy to leave immediately and never come back. He admits honestly, holding Ryan was a selfish impulse. There is absolutely no place for a person here. He persistently asked him to return to the surface before the other clowns caught his scent. Ryan looks at the ground, quietly digesting the monster's words. Suddenly he realized this is his chance to finally break free and return to the surface. Just as he was about to leave, Kevel suddenly froze in place. Because Ryan grabbed his cloak and desperately begged, "Don't say that." He asks if magic is just a game for a creature that is already so powerful, and he asserts magic is as important to him as life itself. They shouted that they were finally making real progress and can't just end everything like that. After a long and hard pause, Kevel simply says that he understands. Kevel admits that he also doesn't want to part without keeping the promised tea. I tell Ryan that the thought of his death is completely unacceptable to him, and that he can no longer continue to expose the boy to such danger. Ryan listened quietly, trying to understand this unexpected and sincere concern of the monster. Suddenly, Jolly's henchman appears and offers to kill Ryan for him, but Jolly appears again and mockingly says that Kevel still couldn't kill the boy. Ryan barely gets to his feet, knowing that in this state he won't be able to defeat the clown. He desperately searches his mind for any solution to this problem. Kevel's voice sharply cut through his thoughts. Is Ryan trying to handle this alone again? Ryan admits with a heavy sigh, unfortunately he can't think of anything to do. And at that very moment, Jolly's assistant appears, cheerfully shouting that he found them, but Kevel sharply interrupts and says to Ryan, "Listen to my plan instead." He suggests together we will defeat the jester. Ryan froze. He realized that he had tried to carry everything on his own again, and Kevel confirmed this, saying he didn't have to do everything by himself. A huge smile blooms on Ryan's face as he enthusiastically agrees to the plan. Jolly's servant screams in panic that Kevel has gone mad because of a person. Jolly comes down from above and says that this whole situation really hurts her. She decides that there is no choice, she will have to kill them both right now. Ryan gathers his willpower before the fight because he knows the clowns here are some of the strongest mages in the dungeon. Jolly suddenly pulls out two pistols which shoot dazzlingly and incredibly fast, and Ryan barely manages to follow her movements as she rushes around the four, forcing Kevel to grab him and pull him out from under the line of fire. Ryan instantly prepares to cast a spell in response to the attack. Jolly just snorts disdainfully. Why dodge such a weak attack? Jolly's subordinate freezes in panic, and Kevel effortlessly dodges the attack, and suddenly she changes target and defiantly announces, "First I'll finish off Kevel." Damn, how this monster annoys so agile in battle. She releases dazzling light from her palms, knowing that this is Kevel's greatest weakness, so that she shouted that she is hungry and wants to devour them both right now. But in the middle of the attack, something made her stop. She froze, confused. Her minion looks down, pondering the strange marks on the ground, and Jolly instantly realizes that it is just an enlarged scrap of paper, a simple trick to buy time. Calling them one trick, she rushes forward to deliver what she thinks is the final blow, but Kevel admits Ryan's magic is powerful, but it alone won't pull through. Jolly is suddenly overwhelmed, shock from the unimaginable amount of energy bursting out, and Ryan smiles and says that together they can do anything they want. Kevel finishes the thought and swears that they will be able to achieve everything they can imagine. From their joint spell bursts a huge wave of power that engulfs everything, and they both land on the ground exhausted but victorious. Kevel is stunned by their coordination and asks in surprise when they even came up with such a powerful combo. Ryan admits that it was all just improvisation on the fly in the heat of battle. He looks away for a moment with a thoughtful expression on his face and says, but Kevel, now in a new uniform, says he never doubted they would succeed. Ryan smiled. He realized that magic still endlessly fascinates. Kevel then mysteriously says that in the end he saw something incredible. That Ryan is puzzled by this. He asks again what exactly he means by the end. The monster says that after their battle others will definitely come to their senses. He stated that he and Ryan live in different worlds and they will have to part ways. Ryan lowers his gaze, broken by this news, and quietly insists that it is not true. Ryan stomps his foot angrily and insists that being separated from friends is simply strange. And he says to Kevel, "Don't suddenly start acting official and distant now." Kevel falls silent for a moment. It is clear that he was surprised by the boy's passionate outburst. His subordinate smiles aloud. Only Kevel could be so strange as to befriend a human. Ryan smiles as if acknowledging that he too is not quite ordinary. Kevel is clearly pleased with his new confidence, and this caught Ryan by surprise. The monster suddenly spoke seriously and asked how much Ryan really knows about him. He asks Ryan not to rush the decision regarding their partnership, at least not until he hears the whole story of Kevel from the very beginning. Kevel agrees to become his partner, but only until Ryan's food supplies run out. Ryan frowned when he realized the immediate problem with that condition, because he knows they barely have enough food and it won't last long. The shot shifts, focusing on the massive leg of the monster, which slammed on the ground while its master curses the human magic that keeps monsters beneath the surface. His minions bustle in the background, shouting that the firewood is almost gone. One of them fervently apologizes to their leader, whom they call Lord Rajua. This Lord Rajua is a huge fiery monster who swears to burn all people to ashes. He turns his gaze to the visitor and recognizes Kevel in him. Kevel stands before him and, as if nothing happened, calmly reports about the wrongdoers in the area. He sharply cut off, in the 10th layer of invaders exactly 0. Rajua is satisfied with the report, but admits that he begins to crave the taste of human flesh. He teases Kevel, claiming that humans are incredibly tasty, but he himself does not know this. He does not eat. Rajua's gaze suddenly sharpened. He asked about the wound on Kevel's hand. Kevel looks at the bandage on his hand, as if the question caught him by surprise. Rajua leaned closer to him and said that if he thoroughly sniffs it. Rajua flared up at him, declaring that he smells a distinct human scent from him, and one of his servants nods. "My lord's nose never lies." The fiery beast roared with rage, furious that a human stepped onto his territory. Only the very thought of it inflamed his blood to frenzied rage. He decisively orders Kevel to immediately go and seize this human invader. He coldly declared that tonight the man would become his dinner. Kevel's minions are in panic. They realized that the hidden man threatens all the monsters. Kevel calmly insists that he thoroughly checked everything and found no human at all. Everything suggests it's just an illusion born of the Lord's burning hatred. Rajua coldly gives Kevel a direct order and warns, "Dare to disobey will face consequences." Remembering Kevel's sister, who has now gone out alone to gather herbs, Fire Lord smiles as if hinting, "Maybe I'll go after her myself." He teases Kevel, saying she is not as good as the human, but still better than hunger. Kevel turned away from him and said that he is going now. He coldly threw out that he has no time to indulge these empty threats. Roger just chuckles at his defiance and tells him to keep repeating it to himself. Kevel steps back and anxiously thinks that deception is visible on his face. He realizes that he has become so used to Ryan's scent that he no longer even notices it. He again recalls the deal he made with Ryan, that young wizard he found. He healed the boy's hand in exchange for the secrets of human magic. Ryan swore to destroy anyone who interferes, monster or not. Now, when Lord Raju began to suspect him, they can no longer idle so calmly. He feels that their time for quiet research is quickly running out. He carefully examines the minotaur bones that his minions brought for them. But his assistant intervenes and reminds him that they no longer need magical catalysts. Kevel knows well he must break free from this danger to protect his family. He reminds himself that Ryan is a human, a natural enemy of all monsters, and he himself is a monster, and this simple truth will never change. His hand clenches with grim determination. A heavy decision has just been made. Returning to the lair, he sees Ryan, who is still completely absorbed in his research. Kevel looks at him for a moment, his face stern and mysterious. Ryan suddenly came up with a new theory that ignited in his head. He proclaims that the time has finally come to put an end to their project. Kevel simply placed his hand on his shoulder, drawing his attention. Ryan asks where he had been, and Kevel simply replies, "Was on patrol." His lackey intervened and asked what he was thinking about so intently. And Ryan explains that he was pondering that giant sandwich they made from magical Po, surprisedly pointing out that strangely even after a whole week it still hasn't rotted. Kevel thought for a moment. The boy has a very apt observation, and this pushes Ryan to say that he wants to try something. He asks Kevel if there is any special magic that he would like to try. Kevel looks surprised by the offer, but Ryan insists that he try at least something. The monster fell silent, pondering the unexpected question for a moment. Ryan smiles, encouraging him to ask anytime, and Kevel finally decides. He asks hopefully, "Is there a spell that can put a person to sleep?" Ryan's eyes lit up with excitement. It was confirmation that the lullaby was truly magical. One of the minions impatiently tries to form the signs for the spell with his hands. He confidently muttered that he could manage on his own without anyone's help with. This embarrassed Ryan, and he asks Kevel if he just said something. Kevel ignores him and stretches out his hands himself, preparing to cast the sleep spell. Ryan agrees to the test, but it seems he sets a condition for it. And Kevel, burning with impatience, decides that they must try the spell right now, so Ryan shouts at him in panic, "Wait," but Kevel calmly says, "Don't worry, PR," promising that if it works, he will wake him up immediately. The boy shouted in protest, realizing that he was not understood at all. He instantly finds himself in the whirl of a chaotic explosion of magical energy. Minions froze in horror and could not understand, was it really lullaby magic? Ryan lies on the ground and resolutely declares that the search must start again. Kevel looked down at him and asked what he meant by that. Ryan explains that Kevel's magic is completely different from human magic. That's why the lullaby spell turned against us and the sandwich did not spoil. Recalling his theory that 4 hands are capable of producing complex human spells. Now he understands, if the formulas are different, their experiments are futile. Well, of course magic works differently in different races, and he is insanely angry at himself for not noticing such a simple thing. Suddenly he is struck again by an explosion. He screams in despair from the pain, but Kevel simply says that it was a test in case his fingers bent differently. The monster thoughtfully considers that he cannot use lullaby magic, it is quite deadly. Ryan eavesdrops as he calls the whole matter unfortunate. Ryan suddenly sat up sharply, angrily demanding to know what he meant by that. Noticing that Kevel has been acting strangely since he returned, he reminds the monster how he always admired all magic, and he shouted that calling any magic unhappy is not like him at all. Kevel explains that he just wanted Ryan to finally get a good rest, but our guy blushed. Someone shouted that it was a pathetic excuse. Ryan sees through this excuse. He feels that something is definitely wrong, and he abruptly stands up, stubbornly not allowing the conversation to end just like that. Kevel says that our guy has exhausted his physical strength, although Ryan feels like he hasn't done anything at all, explaining that Ryan gave all his time to research and completely forgot to rest. He reminds Ryan of that powerful magic with which he struck Jolly. It drained everything out of him. Kevel suggests resting a bit, saying that better ideas will come that way, but Ryan immediately refuses, stating that their conversation is far from over. The monster asks if his explanation somehow did not satisfy the listener, but Kevel admits to himself he cannot lie to him, and in fact he worries about the guy. Ryan notices this and asks if something worries Kevel so much that he is lost in thought. He looks directly at Kevel and begs him to share his burden in order to help. He insists, no matter how difficult or impossible the problem may seem. A confident smile blooms on his face, and he says that they will be able to solve this together. He challenges Kevel, will he still insist that they live in different worlds, shouting passionately that such a thing no longer matters to them. Kevel fell silent, as if moved by the boy's powerful words. Finally, he lifts his gaze to him. A new determination burns in his eyes. He admitted that until this very moment, he also believed that they were from different worlds. Suddenly he collapsed unexpectedly, whispering to Ryan, "Don't take this the wrong way." He tells the boy that he really should have returned to the surface then. Black shadow descended over them, and Kevel's clawed hand loomed threateningly. Sharp fingers reached down to the tired and confused boy. He hovered over Ryan for a moment, and no one could understand his intentions. And suddenly his hand fell down. The head of his own henchman flew off. Ryan raises his gaze in complete shock as the head of the small creature rolls away. Other minions tremble with fear, trying to understand what is causing this trembling. And suddenly the ground beneath them split with a deafening roar, and a huge fiery beast breaks its way into the cave. Before us appeared the fiercely angry face of Lord Raju himself. Kevel froze in amazement as the Fire Lord calmly says he was just walking, but the tense expression on his face betrays the truth. He knows the real reason why he ended up here. Raju's story weaves around Kevel's sister. She confirms his suspicions about the human. He suspended Ryan in the air and mocked Kevel because he was tormented by such a trifle. Ryan angrily glances up at the beast and recognizes the infamous Lord Raju. Kevel pleadingly asks the Lord to release his sister before taking the human, but Raju indifferently waved off the request and calmly replied, "Don't rush." He lets her go, and Kevel immediately rushes to her to check if everything is all right. Tense silence fell when Kevel turned to face the Fire Lord. Roger looked down at Ryan and grumbled that he could barely be considered a snack. The huge beast lets out a fierce roar, ready to swallow him whole. Suddenly, a sharp blade slid out of Kevel's hand with a metallic clang. stunning his sister, who stands aside and watches with distrust. Blade cuts Raj's hand and he drops the boy. Keval catches Ryan at the last moment, just before he hits the ground with a dull thud. In his eyes burned a cold, unwavering determination to protect him. Lord Rajua looks at them, shock and rage simultaneously on his face. While Ryan lies on the ground, Kevil's sister calls out her brother's name. Raju has already counterattacked, pinned Keval down, and demands fiercely to know what he is doing. He asks whether Keval truly realizes the consequences of his actions. They asked whether he really tried to save the person. Pressed to the ground, Keval admits, although it wasn't his plan, he simply changed his mind. He explains that, as it turned out, he was actually just. As someone once said, he himself was a genuine eccentric monster. He suddenly says that he felt sorry to let the boy die, but Raju mocks this idea, calling his sudden change of heart complete nonsense. The Fire Lord growls that Keval is not an eccentric, but simply an idiot who needs to be burned. Her sister just stands, paralyzed with horror, and watches the Lord's uncontrollable rage. Roger cracked his neck, preparing to deliver a devastating blow, but something makes him stop, and he is suddenly overwhelmed with confusion. Ryan somehow stands on his feet and is bewildered, not understanding what is happening to his body. Keval looked aside in surprise. The boy had already woken up. Raju waved off, "I'll deal with the kid later." Ryan responded with a defiant look and ordered the massive beast to shut up. He raised a finger and sharply ordered the large fluffy beast to step away from Keval. The Lord of Fire suddenly burst out with mocking laughter at his words and, enthralled by the child's courage, he promises to savor every piece. Ryan does not back down, his voice is firm, again and again demanding that they move away from his friend. He lunged forward with an explosion of unexpected speed and strength, and even Keval seemed surprised by the boy's sudden attack. In the new form, Keval asks, how does Ryan even stand if his strength is gone? Ryan admits he, more than anyone, knows that he overexerts himself. But he says this just as Keval is being humiliated and is about to be killed. He cannot just stand aside and do absolutely nothing when help is needed. He shouts that he refuses to be that big fool who abandons a friend. Keval smiled slyly and agreed. He is not a fool, but he himself is quite eccentric. Ryan smiled and declared that they are still perfectly suited to each other. Lord Rajua watches from afar, and slowly understanding awakens within him. He finally realizes what Keval had been planning all along. He was accused, allegedly he allied with a person only to overthrow him. Ryan looks completely bewildered by this accusation, wondering if that was really their plan. Keval admits that Rajua is making hasty conclusions, but it will end exactly that way anyway. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a united front against the Fire Lord. Keval instantly sprang into motion, rushing toward the huge beast Meanwhile, Ryan recognizes him, the very legendary burning lion from the book. He teases the beast, saying that the book claimed, some mage has already defeated it. Flipping the book, he wondered, will he also receive a reward for this? Ryan begins to cast a powerful spell, calling the wind to take his side, releasing a massive crystal shard carrying enormous magical power. He defiantly points at the enemy and challenges the fluffball, come on, show what you can do. But his eyes bulge in pure horror when Rajua effortlessly breaks the spell with a fierce roar. The Burning Lord looked at him condescendingly and disdainfully called that attack a complete disappointment. He simply waved off the boy, stating that he wasn't even worth being eaten. Ryan chews this over in his head, wondering, doesn't disappointment mean it looked impressive? A confident smile appears again on his face, and he declares it a great success. Keval looks on, completely stunned by the boy's strange logic, and until Rajua realizes that all this is just a cunning deception. The Lord roars, no matter what he does, his pathetic blows will never reach him. Ryan understands that his hands will not reach the monster, but Keval appears right behind Raju and gently offers him a lullaby. The powerful and devastating blow, Keval slashed Raju right across the face. Fire Lord groaned dully, his eye flashed with pain and complete shock. While Ryan could only stand aside and stare, completely stunned by the insane power of the attack. Keval noticed that the opponent turned out to be strangely resilient and was already preparing his next move. And then he asked the beast how he would like to be hit with something much bigger. Ryan could not help but smile. He agreed, it was indeed a great idea. But suddenly Keval caught him and threw him high into the air. The boy was completely unprepared for this. When Raju, cursing the ground beneath his feet, realized that their impossible plan had now begun. In the reflection of his eyes, two appeared frozen, ready to strike. And he could not believe his eyes when Keval was preparing to launch the boy forward. The blazing lion roared defiantly that he would never and under no circumstances lose to the likes of them, but Ryan only smiled in response, challenging him, go ahead, test that very theory. Completely enraged by their confidence, Rajua challenged them, "Keep babbling," and Kevil hurled Ryan forwards like a cannonball, wrapped in a whirlwind of energy. Ryan resisted with his last strength the colossal power of the Lord, trying to hold his spell. While Raju mockingly laughed at the boy and threw, "Is that all you can offer?" A powerful explosion of raw force erupted between them and shook the entire cave. And the Lord's eyes burned with pure hatred as he swore to kill them all to the last one. Kevil calmly said that he had fallen very deeply into their carefully laid trap. Suddenly the ground gave way beneath him, and Rajua fell into the newly formed abyss. Kevil watched from above as he fell, and nothing could be read on his face, a strangely calm expression. He noticed that the beast definitely would not come out from there so easily. The unstable ground, as it turned out, was a very useful part of his overall plan. Then he turned his gaze to Ryan and said that he must first apologize to him. While Kevil's sister watched, he admitted that he used Ryan as bait to save his relatives. Ryan looked up at him, completely embarrassed by this sudden and unexpected apology. Kevil simply asked in surprise what exactly he meant by that question. Ryan exploded with irritation, demanding to know why he was kept in a dark room. He reminded Kevil that it was he who taught him never to be alone with his problems. Kevil fell silent for a moment, stunned into silence by the boy's passionate words, and Ryan insisted that the plan would have worked better if he had known from the start that he would be made bait. He told Kevil that he really should have understood him by now. He reached out his hand and asked to promise that next time he would tell him everything. His face lit up with a bright smile, and he exclaimed that together they could do anything. Kevil looked around, a slight smile appeared under the mask as he spoke Ryan's name. He admitted that Ryan was also a weird in his own unique way, and Ryan thanked him when they shook hands, and at that moment their bond became stronger than ever. Their quiet moment was suddenly interrupted by the sound of another voice. Kevil's sister looked at Ryan with deep suspicion and directly asked, "Who are you really?" She loudly demanded, "Why is a human warrior down here fighting alongside her brother, and F?" Completely confused, she shouted at Kevil, who quickly tried to calm her down. Even one of the little minions seemed completely confused by this strange turn of events when Kevil firmly held the exhausted Ryan and asked his sister to first prepare a bed for him. He smiled and said that the time was just perfect, that was going to explain everything anyway. He told her that it was a very long story, but begged her to listen very carefully, promising to tell her everything about him and about his dear friend who fought alongside him. Then the scene shifted to a peaceful town, and children's voices echoed through the air, where a little boy, exactly resembling Ryan, was fighting with a burning lion using a stick in the game. He laughed heartily, pretending to be defeated in their grand imaginary battle. Meanwhile, other children celebrated their victory and joyfully announced that the next team was ready to accept the challenge. Much younger Ryan was then called by other children playing nearby, and he turned to them, and fatigue and obvious irritation were visible on his face. But one of the boys instantly blocked his way and said that he was not allowed to join because they forced Ryan to stand aside and watch while everyone started calling him a weakling. Children gossiped about him from afar, saying that he was too slow to even play with them. He watched them pretending to be heroes, knowing that only a few become true warriors. With a heavy heart, he turned around and headed back to the small family cafe. In the house, his guardians welcomed him warmly and asked if it was fun to play outside with friends. Ryan could only whisper quietly and uncertainly, "Yes." Two adults exchanged a quick, worried glance over his clearly depressed mood. The man tried his best to cheer him up. He asked if he could help at the market on the weekend. He remembered that his 11th birthday was also coming soon. Ryan had just said that his aunt and uncle could manage perfectly well without him. He stubbornly insisted that instead he would just stay and look after the house. Suddenly, a cheerful woman flew right through the door, frightening the boy, and she awkwardly asked if by any chance there were Silo's bottles in the snack bar. She was completely delighted when they confirmed that they had been eagerly peeking over the counter. The woman loudly rejoiced and exclaimed, "Finally, I found what I was looking for." She had just started savoring the drink, and Ryan was already wondering who was this strange person, when another man entered the snack bar and called her Ms. Jean. Ryan's guardian froze in shock, immediately recognized this famous name as, and it turned out she was none other than the famous sorceress Jean Seraphi. Ryan overheard her whispering that she was drinking now because of the investigation tonight, and he couldn't believe that this carefree woman was actually a powerful witch. His guardians began to guess that her investigation definitely concerned the burning lion. His guard added that the burning lion even burned the orchards of the village silo. And Jean, in shock, slammed the table and asked if those expensive grapevines were also destroyed. It seems this destruction was so terrible that wine production would be halted for years. She screamed in complete despair, exclaiming that it was her favorite wine brand. Suddenly she was struck with an idea: she could use magic to grow more grapevines. She quickly realized she could not handle such a big matter on her own. From the top of the stairs, Ryan suddenly shouted at the strange sorceress to stop babbling. Jean raised his eyes, surprised by the sudden and unexpected interruption of the young boy. He shuddered and jumped back frightened when her sharp gaze fell directly on him, and she stood close in front of him and asked for help to build a completely new vineyard. Ryan was completely stunned by that strange and incredibly sudden request. He grabbed both his hands and declared that they were perfect for magic. He announced to his guardians that the boy had an innate talent for it, but Ryan waved it off, saying that someone like him would never do that. In response to his doubt, Jean simply shoved a small notebook into his hands, and he saw her personal notebook filled with her special magic. She proudly told him to read it and boasted about how well she had summarized everything. He was confused when she said that he could keep it for a whole week while she was in town. She left as quickly as she appeared, asking to set aside a bottle of wine for her for tomorrow. Ryan remained standing with the book in his hands, completely bewildered after this strange encounter. People saw magicians as the saviors of the entire human world. He felt that this magnificent title was the furthest from who he could ever be. That night he tried to fall asleep, but the words of that strange woman echoed in his head and gave him no peace. His eyes suddenly opened wide, thoughts raced wildly, finding no moment of calm. Finally, he slipped out of bed. His restless curiosity took over. He decided just to read a little before sleep. He kept telling himself that he would just look at it until he started to feel sleepy. Ryan sat at the table and immersed himself completely in the very history of magic that he had studied. He will learn that his incredible power is drawn from nature and passes through human hands. The book told how simple finger combinations could invoke over 1,000 spells, and he was completely captivated by it all, wondering if it was not a dream. In a surreal vision, he imagined himself floating in the air, reading about levitation, and when he made the corresponding gesture with his hand, the pencil on his desk began to rise right before him. The next morning, Jean suddenly appeared out of nowhere and caught him off guard in the middle of training. And the pencil clattered to the floor, instantly dispelling those fragile charms. Jean just smiled warmly and praised him for his obvious innate talent, and she noticed with surprise that he was so diligent, but still warned him to sleep more. Suddenly her expression became very serious. She was about to ask him a question, but Ryan was so absorbed in the book, saying that he was about to reach the most interesting part. Jean was momentarily stunned by his strong and unwavering concentration. Before a wide knowing smile slowly spread across her face. She proudly told herself that she really does have a good eye for talent. Downstairs, the family cafe was bustling with visitors as always. One of the regulars, as always, ran in for breakfast, and he was surprised to see Ryan sitting at the table, completely absorbed in a book. The uncle explained that Ryan had been like that since yesterday, and the customer noticed how suddenly diligent the boy had become. Ryan was so engrossed in reading that he did not notice his food at all. He was lost in a completely different world, while his guardians watched with curiosity. Meanwhile, other visitors of the diner anxiously discussed the recent antics of the burning lion. But a new, unwavering determination lit up in Ryan's eyes when he was intently studying the chapter in Jean's notebook about plant growth magic. He tried to pronounce the spell himself, but was embarrassed by the lack of results when he wondered why nothing happened, even though he was using the correct formula. He realized that the only thing he might be lacking was his own imagination. And suddenly Jin appeared nearby and offered him valuable advice. She told him that the secret is to imagine the result with all your willpower. She explains that pure technique alone can only take a mage so far. She passionately insisted that the last, most important step is to sincerely believe in its success, and he must not just hope that the plant will grow, he has to imagine it already grown. Ryan froze for a moment, trying to comprehend her strange but incredibly powerful words. He imagined in his mind how the tiny sprout had already become a fully grown plant. Gathering new focus, he again formed his hands into seals. From his fingertips, a stream of energy poured into the small pot. Suddenly, the plant shot up from the ground, and he was completely stunned. Jin praised him for grasping complex concepts so incredibly quickly, and Ryan plunged back into training even more persistently than before. He was so absorbed in training that he didn't even hear Jean's next advice when she told him it was already late and probably he should go home for the night. But her face became serious. She promised not to give in to some ordinary child. That night she once again confirmed her mission to find and defeat that dangerous target. Meanwhile, Ryan wandered to the outskirts of the city, still engrossed in a magical book. He sighed heavily, realizing that tomorrow he would have to return the notebook to her. Russell peeked out from the nearby bushes. It became clear Jean was spying on him again, and he asked whether she was really working or just paying attention to him. Suddenly, Ryan's eyes filled with absolute paralyzing tears. When the same kids from before cornered him in an alley, pressed him against the wall, and mockingly called him a weakling. He froze in shock, seeing what they were holding in their hands when the main bully mockingly asked if he was pretending to be a magician. He mockingly laughed at the boy who told Ryan not to get cocky because of his little book. Ryan just froze and watched as they threatened to teach him a painful lesson. And suddenly, in a flash of light, everyone rushed forward to grab that precious notebook. Their jeers echoed that he would never become a real wizard. The bullies decided that they would never again allow him to behave arrogantly with them, and all hope vanished from Ryan's face as they completely overwhelmed him. But a sudden step in the alley interrupted their cruel and senseless game, and it was Jean. She complained that she couldn't find what she was looking for. Her expression instantly changed when she suddenly noticed the scene unfolding before her, and she found Ryan hunched in the alley and immediately asked what he was doing there. He casually asked if he was taking a break from his magical training. But Ryan just looked up at her and said that magic was impossible for someone like him. He listed all his complexes, calling himself short, slow, and incredibly clumsy, and Jean just smiled and asked who had told him all that funny nonsense. She explained, having two hands, magic makes absolutely everything possible. A small spark of hope returned to Ryan's eyes again after her encouraging words, but he still could not imagine himself as a real wizard. He stubbornly insisted that other children were much better suited for this, not him. And Jean simply said that it was a pity he treated himself that way before death. Before making a hand sign and saying that this was a farewell, Ryan looked up in complete shock, completely unprepared for her sudden words. Ryan raised his eyes to the sorceress, completely puzzled by her sudden and final farewell, and he asked if she was going to use magic so that he would forget everything, and Jean was delighted that he recognized the spell formula so quickly. He noted that finding one spell among 1,000 is a real challenge. But Ryan actually managed to do it, and she asked him why he thought so. The young boy could only look at her in response, not knowing how to answer her question, and she told him that it was simple because he worked incredibly hard. Jean firmly said that one should not listen to anyone who has not seen his devoted efforts reminded him that he cannot imagine himself as a wizard because he does not even try to imagine it. Her gaze sharpened as she told him what he would have to do to become one. That he must constantly imagine that version of himself, a powerful mage. If he ever doubts himself or his imagination, he will never be able to move forward. She smiled and told him that if he manages to do just that, she assured him that then he could achieve anything and promised he definitely will. Ryan clenched his fist tightly. Her strong words penetrated him deeper and deeper. The memory faded and he woke up, wondering why he was remembering his master right now. Kevel was carrying him on his back, asking if he was not asleep and how he felt, and Ryan stubbornly said that he was fine, but his attention was drawn to something else. He froze in shock when he saw a huge, terrible monster chasing after them. One of the small creatures that was with them instantly gave a brief explanation of what was going on. And it seemed that Raju, the beast they had just defeated, was the leader of the monsters. By knocking him down, they had actually created an even bigger problem for themselves. It stirred up all the surrounding monsters and they became extremely hostile. They had already left most behind, but Raju's right hand, his guard, was still chasing them. The beast growled at Kevel, accusing him of betrayal before the entire monster world. Kevel waved off the empty threat and said he was tired of all these talks about the monster world, and then he turned his attention to Ryan and asked what the boy was going to do now. He was given a chance to return to the surface if he wanted to escape danger. Garth warned whether they fight or flee, the problem will still come back because Rajua is still alive and he will pursue them with even greater hatred than before. Kevel admitted that he could probably help Ryan get out of this mess, but there was one catch. She explained that Rajua sooner or later would take revenge even on the surface of the world. Ryan lowered his eyes for a moment. The weight of this new information began to press on him, but he raised his head with new determination and declared that they definitely had to fight. He explained if Rajua comes for them, then this is their perfect chance to strike Val, swearing to completely defeat the burning lion before he ever reaches the surface. One of the little henchmen looked quite surprised at the boy's sudden confidence. Kevel's sister seemed simply skeptical of his bold claim. Kevel just beamed with joy. His spirit praised Ryan's brilliant idea, and And Ryan said that he still needed to learn more magic and that he also wanted to protect his family. He playfully accused Kevel of checking whether he would run away too. He said to Kevel, "Put me down, I will defeat their enemy myself." With a determined look, he said that he must prove he is not all talk. Kevel's sister's voice cut through. She had overheard their entire conversation. She and the lackey called their plan simply an impossible dream. She reminded them that they had barely moved from their place and had wounded Rajua with all their strength and insisted that now they had absolutely no chance to win. Artie mockingly sneered from afar, agreeing that Kevel's sister was truly smart. Ryan shouted back, passionately insisting that it was not impossible. He suddenly remembered the master's main secret to strongly and clearly imagine the final result in his mind. With this thought, Ryan picked up a small, completely unremarkable pebble from the ground. With a new determined expression on his face, he hurled it straight forward. The tiny pebble flew straight towards the very surprised and puzzled Gardy. The beast mocked that pitiful distraction, shouting that it wouldn't work. One of the little servants watched the whole scene unfold with great interest. And Kevel's sister admitted that now it was useless to try to stop the boy. He even noted that Ryan was much more stubborn than her. Suddenly, Jean's confident smile and her promise that he could do anything flashed in his memory. He recalled his simple, trusting reply to her from those old years and, returning to the present, he said he understood and would try. Ryan formed the seal with his hand, launching the spell Formula 17, Matter Expansion. This caused the tiny stone to shine and instantly grow in the air. Artie's eyes opened wide in disbelief. Before him appeared a completely impossible sight. The stone suddenly grew into a giant boulder, and the frightened monster below became tiny next to it. Kevel and his sister froze in amazement, watching this impressive display of strength. Ryan told Kevel that he had just had a nostalgic dream about his past. And he clenched his fist, vowing to defeat Rajua and return Kevel's hand. He said that his master would be disappointed if he doubted himself again. Kevel thought that Ryan must have a very reliable mentor. Suddenly, Kevel's sister grabbed Ryan in the middle of his sentence and pulled him away before he could give a proper answer. The group fled when from below from the cliff, their pursuers noticed them for real. Suddenly, they realized the giant hole they had just dug was a perfect passage leading even deeper into Geo. Kevel shouted for everyone to hold on tight to him. Ahead was a long descent, preparing to jump into the darkness waiting for them below. As they rapidly fell into darkness, Kevel tightly pressed Ryan and that little creature to himself. And even now, he was asking Ryan to teach him that expansion magic a little later. Ryan was stunned to realize that he was now talking about magic, but still gladly agreed to teach him. Suddenly, the scene turned back to the younger Ryan, who was peacefully sleeping in his bed with. Next to him lay Jean's notebook after a long night of diligent study. He eagerly read every page of her special handwritten notebook, Meanwhile, somewhere her team was sternly reproaching Jean for being late to their meeting. Her colleague instantly accused her of wandering and drinking. It had been like that until now, but she only smiled playfully and said she went out to look for new talents. He told her to sit down and noted that for someone named Chris, all this would be a real labyrinth. Jean sat down, her face changing. She took the matter seriously. She took the floor and, as if laying out cards, began to describe their usual patrol routes for investigation. And one of her people said that there are no threats at all in the Eastern District. Another immediately picked up, just confirming that the Western District is also quiet. The patrol of the Southern District also returned and again found absolutely nothing. Jin's team is in despair. They realized that after a whole week of searching they had no leads and they bitterly regretted that due to lack of strength they could not search underground after the war. One man, not seeing the monster, dared to ask if it was really that dangerous, but another warrior insisted that it is incredibly powerful and hard to even damage. Then sharply interrupted, explaining that the real threat is not its strength, but its mind. They said that the beast is not just raging, it is calm and collected. The most alarming thing, it seemed genuinely interested in her magic. An image of the monster appeared before her, and she insisted that it cannot just be left like that. Warning, if it ever learns to use magic, they will be completely without a chance. With unwavering determination in her eyes, she vowed to defeat him before it ever happened. The blazing lion roared in memory, swearing he would kill them all with his own hands. And Ryan enthusiastically told how he and Kevel chased the beast deeper and deeper underground. He decided they would not wait for the attack, they would go to him themselves. But Ryan looked at his wounded hand and knew that his strength was currently insufficient. He decided to become much stronger to finally defeat Raju. He knew that his main goal had not changed one bit from the very beginning, but first he had to find a way to heal his hand and help Kevel. Suddenly he was noticed. He was lying on the ground and asking for just a little time. And Cavel's sister scolded him for allowing himself to relax in the middle of enemy territory, but yet Ryan insisted, "I cannot wait, the mage's hands are his life." Without his powerful magic, he knew that they had absolutely no chance against Raju. And the scene instantly turned to the past. Younger Ryan asked if his master was coming, being confirmed that she was initially in the city only for reconnaissance, and her colleague grumbled that she stayed only because of Ryan. The boy asked when they would meet again, but she only answered vaguely. She just smiled, thinking about when this soon would really come. She said she couldn't wait to see his imagination become reality. And she handed him a small gift as a farewell before she had to go. He held the small pendant tightly while her team called for her to hurry. Ryan could only watch her leave, memorizing her last moments in the city, and cheerfully waving his hand, Jean said goodbye to him for now. Returning to the present, Ryan knew he wouldn't be able to return until his hand healed. He felt like a real disappointment as Kevel and his sister carried him. One of the little creatures whispered the magic was the only thing he could do right now. Finally, they found a place that should be safe at least for some time. Ryan raised his head in complete astonishment, eyes wide open from total disbelief. When they entered the huge glowing cave, it was filled with giant glowing trees. A breathtaking, impossible forest, thriving wildly deep beneath the earth's surface. He could barely comprehend what he saw, muttering that there is a forest underground. And he noticed that the huge trees somehow grew upwards with their roots hanging from above. He turned to Kevel, not understanding how this could happen, and at that moment a strange chime sounded. And a huge clawed paw suddenly fell right in front of them. A colossal spirit resembling a deer made of wood and crystal peacefully hovered above them, and Ryan panicked and could not understand. How could this be considered a safe place at all? He instantly prepared to whisper a spell, his hand already tensed for the formula, but Kevel's sister instantly stopped him, firmly pressing his hand. Kevel calmly greeted the huge creature Lord Tai, who seemed to know him. The eye of the forest spirit focused on Ryan and recognized him as a human. Ryan hid behind his friends and nervously asked Kevel what he was doing, but the creature simply calmly said to Kevel, "Take care of yourself," as if their presence did not concern it at all. Ryan was completely stunned when he realized that the giant monster was not going to attack them. Kevel decided that they should rest a little, which greatly embarrassed Ryan. Kevel's sister asked if he knew this place, and he casually confirmed that he did. Ryan sat down, gears turned in his head as he digested this new information. Drawing with his finger in the mud, he asked if this meant that Raju's lair was not the lowest level. Kevel decided to enliven and supplement the simple, rough drawing of the boy. He carved a line into the ground with his sharp finger just below the sketch, explaining that the true home of all monsters actually hides much deeper. He revealed that what Ryan considered the bottom was just a tiny part of their world. Ryan's eyes widened in complete horror as he realized the terrible scale of their problem. Ryan shouted in panic that they needed to hurry, sure that more battles awaited ahead, but Kevel calmly said that they actually wouldn't have to fight much, and this confused Ryan. He explained, unlike the hot monsters above, these creatures here are peaceful, and Ryan suddenly understood. The creature they had seen earlier was not an accident at all. Still puzzled, he decided to put it aside for now and said they needed to move on. But Kevel knelt down and just by saying his name, instantly drew all the boys' attention to himself. He asked what he would do if there was a way to regenerate flesh without magic. Ryan was stunned by this question. He could hardly believe such a method even existed. And Kevel admitted that he wasn't sure, but one place might hold the answer they needed. Meanwhile, Kevel's sister was watching their conversation from afar, saying nothing, as Kevel called this mysterious place Convection. He explained that this legendary place here the lives of monsters are born and die, and Ryan guessed if this is the birthplace, it must be involved in the creation of bodies. Kevel was simply listening to the boy's theory, thoughtfully uttered "hem" and replied. A smile appeared on Ryan's face. He was surprised to hear Kevel talk about such ancient legends. He admitted that he was insanely interested in the method of healing without magic, but what he doubted was it not just an ancient legend passed down through the ages. They laugh out loud, saying that such a convenient story simply cannot be true. Suddenly Kevel's sister grabbed him from behind. He froze completely from surprise and she asked what was going on and if he really said that he did not believe her brother. She raised a strange plant with tentacles and asked if he had ever heard of Palpagra's explaining that the fresher the plant, the stronger its healing properties. She told him that she would just heal his hand while the plant gently wrapped around his wound. Ryan watched with his mouth open as the strange plant instantly began to heal his wound. Meanwhile, Kevel's sister watched, her face tense, and she admitted that she was truly envious. She admitted that she envied Ryan his ability to marvel at their world. And although Ryan thought she was mocking him, she insisted that it was a gift, a chance to learn something new. She teased that she couldn't wait to see his reaction when they finally reached the convection, explaining that since she recalled her path, nothing could surprise her anymore. When Ryan understood what she meant, she confirmed that convection was not just a legend. Kevel finally let it slip. Convection is a real place where he and his sister were born, and then he promised that with his support, Ryan would definitely be able to reach convection too. Ryan just silently watched as the weight of this discovery settled on him, and Kevel admitted fear of the unknown, but asked if he did not feel excitement at the same time. He explained that the joy of discovery was much stronger than any fear he could feel. But his sister only sighed and said that he was the only one who was so fascinated by such things. Ryan smiled lightly and remarked that Kevel really had not changed one bit. It made him wonder what kind of place could have raised someone like Kevel. Sudden interest on his part seemed to throw Kevel and his sister off track, and Ryan smiled and said that they would never know if his hand would heal if they did not geo. Kevel looked down at the boy and fully understood his renewed determination. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by tiny, curious forest spirits. Ryan froze in shock when Kevel recognized them as dryads and wondered if they were awakening. The boy became alert at the strange words and asked what he meant by wake up. Kevel explained that the whole forest was their home, and they were meanwhile resting in their bedroom. He calmed Ryan down. They did not want harm, just curious and mischievous creatures. And the spirits immediately flew to Ryan, amazed to see a human for the first time. They bombarded him with questions, "Can you fly?" and begged him to fly. Kevel decided to agree to avoid trouble, but Ryan was already walking away. Tiny spirits called after him, confused about where the human boy was going, and Ryan apologized and told the tiny spirits that they did not have time to play. He firmly stated that his only goal now was to move forward, and Kevel's sister turned to him and asked if he had finally finished resting. The boy assured that he was ready to set off at any moment. Kevel watched and did not know what to do next. The voices of the dryads suddenly darkened, asking him why he refused to play with them, and their faces suddenly became threatening, and they promised they would not let him go. Kevel suddenly realized that in a moment his entire manner of behavior had changed for the worse, and Ryan nervously asked if the dryads were really as harmless as he said. Kevel admitted, although they are not dangerous, they are incredibly troublesome, and when the group suddenly broke into a run, a swarm of angry spirits was chasing them. Ryan desperately asked what their weakness was, hinting that fire should be used, but Kevel's sister immediately rejected that absolutely terrible idea. "This is a warning, fire here would be a disaster for the entire forest." Kevel agreed, hoping to resolve it peacefully. They were not going to kill anyone, but suddenly Ryan dug his feet into the ground, stopping their frantic escape, and a new idea clearly lit up in his head, and he fell silent, lost in thought. He asked if their only way out was to do exactly what the spirits wanted. And Kevel confirmed, the usual strategy is to play until they get tired. The word dream prompted Ryan if only he knew the lullaby spell, and Kevel, misunderstanding, immediately rushed to implement the boy's idea. The decision caught Ryan completely and utterly by surprise. He released a powerful gust of wind. Tiny spirits were tossed into the air, but the dryads went wild with joy and begged him to do it again. Kevel explained he reacted to the lullaby, but his magic is a cutting wind. Kevel suddenly realized this cutting wind spell has its own name. Although Ryan said it was just strong wind magic, too weak to cut such light targets. He cried out in despair that he wanted a lullaby, not a cutting wind spell. Kevel suddenly became excited and asked Ryan to teach him the Kame Takai formula. Meanwhile, Ryan quickly and decisively told him that now was definitely not the time for a magic lesson. Kevel began to guess if lullaby could turn into Kame Takai, then maybe the reverse is possible too. Ryan insisted that it was by no means that simple, but suddenly froze when suddenly a brilliant idea ripened in his head. Kevel immediately noticed the expression on his face and instantly understood that the boy had a plan, and Ryan raised his eyes to the forest, as if suddenly remembering something, so that it was loudly announced that consecutively, one after another, they would quickly take the roles of lullaby and Kame Takai. Kevel suddenly realized these hand gestures were simply done in reverse. That's why they produced the opposite effect. The tiny dryads whirl around, completely unaware of their plan. Ryan confidently stated that they would find out if it worked only when they tried. Kevel slyly smiled, agreeing with the boy's bold and decisive approach. Together they began to recite the starting formula of spell 756, Lullaby Scent, directing a wave of sparkling magic that induces sleep toward the spirits, and Ryan immediately shouted for them to cancel the spell as soon as they cast spell 663, Kametachi immediately rushed after. Kevil's sister watched the incredible spectacle enchanted, completely stunned by how they acted in unison. Kevil observed the magic working and finally understood the strategy. The wind from the second spell did not dissipate but swirled in place, catching the dryads in a gentle whirlwind that slowly lulled them to sleep. Kevil had to admit how cunning their joint spell was when the sleepy dryads suddenly realized the lullaby magic came with the wind and fell as fine dust. Ryan sat among the sleeping spirits, finally understanding what it really means to use magic, and Kevil's sister ran up, relieved to realize her brother was okay. Meanwhile, Kevil enthusiastically praised the boy for the brilliant strategy and masterful technique. Ryan insisted that he could not have done it alone. Kevil was needed to hold the winds. He smiled and said that it was a strategy that only they could accomplish together. Ryan jumped to his feet and, filled with excitement, shouted that it was time to head to the convection. Kevil asked if he was sure, and he admitted that after spending so much energy, he really wanted to rest, but our guy was unshakable. He said he wanted to keep moving forward. Then he boldly asked if Kevil would carry him if he got tired, and quickly added that he was joking. Kevil agreed without hesitation and told him it was time to set off. But at that moment, Ryan's eyes widened in pure, absolute shock when suddenly, out of nowhere, a shadowy, threatening figure appeared. Suddenly, he was knocked off his feet by a powerful, invisible force. Kevil shouted his name, reaching out a desperate hand. Ryan reached back, completely helpless, as he was dragged away. Strange, powerful tentacles grabbed him and pulled him into the darkness. He groaned in pain, being dragged through thorny thickets at incredible speed, while he watched as his friends became tiny and slowly disappeared into the distance. The distance between them increased in just a fraction of a second, and finally he stopped abruptly, hitting the ground hard. He looked around, finding himself in a strange place filled with intertwined roots. He wondered if he had ended up inside a tree and decided to find Kevil and the others. The sudden sound made him turn his head sharply and frightened him. His eyes widened in shock. He could not believe his eyes. He just stood there, completely bewildered by what he had found in such a place. A familiar woman appeared with a cheerful smile and said, like that was close, and he lowered her gaze to Ryan and greeted him after such a long separation. Ryan froze in place, completely unable to comprehend what was happening. He asked his mentor Jean why she was here, underground. Thoughts raced in his head, replaying her casual entrance again and again. Jean simply smiled, happy to see her former student again. The boy stood stunned. Shock was evident in every feature of his face, and he involuntarily tried to hide his missing hand from her gaze. But her watchful eyes had already noticed everything, and she looked thoughtfully at Ryan before teasing him playfully for not having grown at all. He insisted that he had grown by a centimeter, and she just called it an error. Ryan quickly brushed off the joke, knowing there were more important things to discuss. Finally, he asked his mentor what she was doing so deep underground. Jean's smile faded as she told him the obvious: she had come to save him. He waved her weapon as if to say it was time to go back, but Ryan just stared ahead. His face was unreadable and silent. Suddenly, he rushed past her, catching his master by surprise. He told her that it was still too early to go. Turning away, he decisively said that now he could no longer return. Jean's gaze fell on his missing hand, as if demanding an answer. Why? He explained that he would soon find a way to get his hand back, and she admitted there was never a word in her notebook about magic that restores flesh. But he was sure the only thing was that he had not found it yet. Still turning back to her with unwavering confidence, he insisted that such a method must exist. He confessed that his recklessness caused this injury, but he refused to return to the surface until his hand healed. Ryan, with a tremor in his voice, asked his master to go ahead without him. He stubbornly insisted that since their last meeting, he had become a much better magician. Jean tried to make sense of it, realizing that monsters were helping him, and Ryan explained that they had taught him things he had no idea about. He lowered his gaze, struggling to find the right words to explain it. He frankly admitted that he had never understood the war between their two races. His fist clenched resolutely as he argued his case before. He said he had learned that not all monsters are evil. He even said that she would befriend his strange new friend, but Jean just stood there, her face completely unreadable, and until she let out a quiet, muffled laugh. Suddenly, she burst out laughing so hard she couldn't stop. Her strange reaction left Ryan completely stunned. She laughed so hard that she could barely stand on her feet, and the boy could only stare confusedly at her sudden outburst of emotions. Finally, she calmed down and let out a long, tired sigh, repeating the plan to him, cooperating with the monsters to get her hand back. A sly, knowing smile spread across her face, and she looked down on him and asked if he was an idiot. She told him that his plan was so absurd that she could barely hold back laughter. Ryan's eye widened in complete disbelief. Jean stumbled and declared that his silliness had spun her head. I wondered why he had gone all this way just to do such nonsense. Her eyes narrowed a cold, cutting, piercing gaze. She admitted that she really hoped to see how much he had grown. Now she only had to express her disappointment. Ryan looked away, and he was overwhelmed by a wave of old insecurities when a painful childhood memory resurfaced again. I am always called clumsy and told that I am too scared to act. I am constantly told, just don't interfere. In his head, a sea of voices from the past broke through. All of them doubted his abilities. Jean looked down at him lying on the ground and decisively told him to face the truth, indicating that he was so exhausted that he couldn't even stand properly. He coldly said that he still doesn't understand his limits. She smiled and told him that this nonsense has been going on for too long. He ordered him to stop being selfish. Her tone became sharper. Announced that now it was time for them to return to the surface. Ryan's eye opened wide from pure, genuine shock. Suddenly, Kevel burst onto the stage, stood between them, and Jean's gaze hardened as she faced the monster. Kevel threw an angry look at her, his voice filled with rage. She could not understand aloud, why is some monster interfering in their reunion? He is silent, posture tense, and ready for battle. Jean waved him off and said that it still doesn't matter. Warned him, don't interfere in their conversation. Kevel, extending his claws, prepared to attack when, and suddenly his sister's voice called him. She grabbed Ryan, ordering him to stay behind, and Kevel already rushed to intercept Jean. Jean prepared her weapon while Kevel's sister pulled Ryan back, and Ryan could only watch, confusedly whispering the name of his master. He watched them from afar, unable to hear their conversation as the boy was clearly stunned by this tense confrontation. Jean simply completely shrugged off the monster's interference, as if Kevel glared in response and addressed the woman who called herself Ryan's master. She accused him. He plans to use the boy to destroy the human world. Kevel saw her thoughts as if through glass, reading her intentions thoroughly. She questioned his alleged plan, completely misreading the situation, but Kevel exposed her mask, pointing out her mistakes. And the woman gathered her strength as the confrontation intensified, while Kevel began methodically dismantling her entire story piece by piece. First, he noted that people do not call monsters magical beasts. And while he continued to explain, she prepared a counterattack. Turned out that the spell with which she grabbed Ryan actually could not control plants. Her face petrified when she realized that she was completely exposed, and Kevel prepared to deliver the final, indisputable proof. She said that she did not even sense a hint of human scent. The imposter's eyes widened. The shocker's cover was completely blown. She sighed wearily. Her game had finally fallen apart. The creature grumbled that he was drawing his conclusions too loudly, her face twisted into a monstrous smile, and she said that everything was only getting better. At that moment, her head was completely destroyed, leaving Kevel standing over the twitching, headless body. He froze, no breath, no movement, his gaze fixed and not blinking at all. New plant-like monsters burst out of the shadows and pleaded with their boss to allow them to eat Kevel. Their leader angrily corrected them and demanded to be called princess. And casting a sinister glance, she ordered them to strangle and devour their prey. Kevel's sister sighed deeply, complaining about the endless interruptions because they were short on time. Kevel turned to his sister Eve and anxiously asked how Ryan was feeling. Eve confirmed that the treatment was complete, but his consciousness would not return immediately. Kevel froze in silence, pondering the new and immediate threat before him. Plant monsters saw this as a perfect chance to attack, but Kevel set them up as targets for magic practice emanating from his forearm. The princess was completely stunned by his sudden, so confident statement. Eve recalled Ryan's warning about this magic, but decided he would not notice it. Urging Kevel to finish them off faster, he suddenly discovered 2 additional arms. And the plant monsters eagerly accepted his challenge, ready for battle. Kevel began to explain the theory behind his unique state of power. They say that human magic subdues the forces of nature with just a flick of the fingers. He realized more Hansen magic grows not just a little but by leaps, many times stronger. And while human magic changes, what already exists is fundamentally different. He declared that human physical limitations do not apply to him. After all, his magic prepared in advance can create something out of absolutely nothing. He ordered his new opponents to watch closely as he cast his spell. They called this incredible power the magic that gives birth to souls. And the plant monsters were completely unprepared. This sudden attack caught them by surprise. As if from thin air, he summoned strange feline creatures to fight for him. And the plant monsters simply froze and watched, unbelieving at that strange summons. Eve watched as tiny dark creatures sprouted from the ground, the result of his spell. One of his feline summons asked the plant monsters if his form was really as magnificent as. Kevel honestly admitted it was his first time summoning several creatures at once. The plant princess roared with rage and told him not to mess with her like. Meanwhile, her servants effortlessly made their way through Kevel's weak feline creatures. Kevel calmly asked if she didn't like his first attempt at the spell B. He prepared to unleash an even more powerful strike with his forearms. In an instant, everything around was covered with sharp, razor-like shards of ice. The princess snorted and asked if he really thought he had frozen them. Kevel corrected her, explaining that it was actually a bit different. Suddenly it became known that her subordinates literally became the ice itself. He explained that his magic did not freeze them, but replaced their very essence. That is, even if the ice melts, there will be no trace left of them. He softened her words by calling his creation true magic. And the princess's eye opened wide in absolute horror and rage. He looked down and realized that her feet were now stuck in his ice. Kevel apologized and honestly admitted that he still could not control it perfectly because the enraged princess could only look at him angrily with distrust. She resolutely demanded to know his purpose, asking why he was killing monsters for the sake of a human. Kevel told her that she would get the answer only after he asked his question. Calling her directly the Thorn Princess, he asked her when, in her opinion, the war between monsters and humans would end, and she, without hesitation for a second, answered, when all humans die. He declared that this is the sincerest wish of all monsters, and the ultimate goal of their leader Lord Rajua. Kevel simply said, "I understand," when the princess questioned his calm reaction. Kevel asked her if she really believed that monsters and humans could reconcile, and the angry princess growled at him, "Stop this nonsense." She insisted that Lord Rajua would never allow anyone to shout that all humans must perish, but Kevel calmly interrupted her, saying he knew she was a fan of Rajua. He turned around and, without looking back, walked away from the broken princess. He explained that she would laugh again only when he revealed his true goal, but the princess's eye widened as he was about to reveal his intentions. He swore to protect Ryan from all dangers, especially from threats like her sin. He stood before them like an unbreakable shield, his goal now clear, but yet the princess admitted she needed Ryan's power for her own plan. She could only stand and watch in stunned silence, completely baffled by his logic, as Kevel simply said that he had nothing more to tell her. Conversation ended, leaving her frozen and broken in the icy cave, and he left without even looking back, leaving her in the icy trap. Eva quietly called him, asked if he still was not going to tell Ryan about their plan. The firm step, Kevel decisively and loudly said to her no. He explained that the future was still too uncertain to tell everything, hoping that the right moment to tell Ryan the truth would come by itself. One of his tiny summoned ones asked everyone to unite for now, and Eva swore full devotion was ready to do anything for her brother. Kevel looked back and with a simple, sincere word said, "Thank you." At that moment Ryan finally moved, and everyone turned their attention to him. The boy recognized Kevel's voice as his senses slowly returned, and when his sight cleared, Eve gently held him, whispering for him to stay seated. Ryan's eyes slowly opened, and his mind began to piece together the chaos of events. He glanced at the fallen plant monster lying before him. He closed his eyes, whispering his master's name as it began to dawn on him. And Kevel started explaining the types of monsters underground. Ryan listened confusedly as Kevel described monsters that lived in specific places. Let's take the example of the thorn people, a species that skillfully uses poison. Kevel explained their poison acts slowly, so they have another ability, which consists of wounding prey with these sharp, thorn-like claws. They can read memories through those wounds and transform into a loved one on the other side. Cruel cunning to confuse their victims while the poison takes over. And Ryan's eye opened wide. He finally understood the entire strategy of the imposter. Kevel's company ironically noted that they encountered such a creature so soon, and he looked directly at Ryan, and his essence became clear as day, telling him that the person he had seen earlier was merely a fake. He assured the boy that now he had nothing to worry about. But Ryan asked why worry at all. He insisted that from the very beginning he knew it was an imposter, even though no one explained. Kevel simply accepted his answer and said, "It's nice to hear that." Tears began to roll down Ryan's face, revealing his true feelings. He admitted to himself his true master could not be so deep underground. He instantly corrected himself, shifting his gaze from the memory of his master to his friend Kevel. Ryan forced himself to smile and said that he was fine and ready to move on. The group stood over the fallen monster, the deception finally fully exposed. Ryan remembered the cruel words that the imposter had said to him. He knew his true master would never be such a person. Ryan confidently declared that he was a completely different person than he once was. He swore to regain his hand and defeat Rajua to finally earn recognition from everyone. A sudden sound tore him from his thoughts and he reminded himself that he was no longer alone. Keval was nearby. He recalled how his new friend constantly guided him and showed shorter paths so that he could become stronger and Keval's voice echoed in his head, focus on the present, not on past failures. The monster's words still pushed him, urging him to go further and Ryan believed that with Keval nearby, they could do everything together. Suddenly, a voice behind made him jump in surprise as if when a new group of cat-like monsters approached him and asked if he had met their master Keval. Keval realized the red-haired mage, that fake policeman, was one of these newcomers and their leader explained the wizard was among the people who invaded her territory. She admitted that they fought in Keval and noted what a strange coincidence it was. Ryan couldn't hold back and asked the newcomer, was his master really that powerful? But she confessed she had never actually seen Jean fight, only that she was incredibly beautiful. Ryan could only look back with a completely blank expression. The cat monster got lost in her memory, completely captivated by the mage and Keval also recalled how she praised her for those magnificent magical skills and smooth techniques. Ryan finally realized that it was Jean who pushed Keval to be so fascinated with magic, and the cat creature added that meeting Ryan fulfilled her wish to connect with Jean. Keval noted that being her student was quite logical after all. Ryan truly had impressive skills. Ryan turned away, embarrassed and not knowing how to respond to the unexpected praise. In his mind, the biting words of the imposter who called him a fool flashed again and in her final devastating verdict, complete disappointment. He shook his head, trying to push the painful memory out of his mind. And looking at the wilting rose, he told himself that he should have known it was all fake. One of the cat-like creatures they summoned warned them, do not stray too far when the caves suddenly began to shake violently, throwing them off balance and Ryan fell to the ground, wondering if it was an earthquake. His eyes widened in shock as the ceiling above them began to crumble and Eva watched in horror as the collapse intensified. A huge boulder fell from above, splitting the group in half and Eva shouted Ryan's name when he found himself in clouds of dust and debris. He asked if he was all right when the trembling finally subsided. Ryan looked around, stunned and confused, calling Keval and Keval confirmed that he and Eva were safe on the other side of the rockfall. Now there was a boulder between them that seemed impossible to break. Ryan admitted that his magic was too weak to clear the way, but Eva stepped forward with a determined expression on her face, announcing that it was her time to use her own magic. She explained that being near Keval helped her vividly imagine his powerful spells. She decided to take this opportunity and try out some new destructive formulas. Ryan saw a vision of his own death and realized he had to stop her plan and he quickly told her to go ahead, not giving directions himself. Indicating another path, he suggested meeting later. He explained that it was a safer, more direct route with fewer monsters on it. And then he added that their goal was very close, just ahead along that path. Eva was simply glowing from the news, her excitement was palpable and Ryan told her that he would wait for them. They were eager to set off. Eve tried to get through to him, saying that the matter was not about that at all. Ryan, now completely alone, cautiously looked over the edge and the frightening reality of his lonely journey began to dawn on him. He persuaded himself that this was Keval's plan, that his friend trusted him, trying to break through exhaustion with sheer determination alone. But his body suddenly failed him. The old poison was still in his system. He forced himself to move forward, knowing he had to keep going for Keval. But when he tried to gather courage within himself, a cruel voice echoed in his head. The imposters gave him no peace, constantly reminding him that no one expected anything from him. His eyes widened as the voice continued its pressure on his mind, like asking him what he really thought about Keval's recent behavior. Suddenly, a new vision flashed in the Anubis-like monster, calling Keval's actions strange, saying, "Tell Ryan, if you don't see this, you have simply been deceived." A bodiless smile mockingly sneered at him, calling the cooperation between humans and monsters ridiculous. Ryan clenched his teeth, desperately trying to silence the insidious voice. But in the darkness, a huge shadowy creature resembling an owl loomed over him, and our guy suddenly realized he had just fallen right into the trap of yet another monster. One of the small creatures summoned by Keval panicked at the sight of the new threat. And the cave was filled with the sounds of sudden chaotic shoving. A sharp claw tore through the air, barely missing the leap of its target. And Ryan was left wondering what had just happened in this confusion. He raised his eyes and saw a harpy, a bird monster with a human face, and quickly assessed its slender but potentially fierce stature. Since it did not attack, he decided to quietly slip past, but the harpy panicked, not knowing how to deal with the human invader. Ryan listened as the creature lamented its clumsiness and weakness with regret. The harpy continued to sob, convinced that one like her was completely useless. Then suddenly Ryan sprang up and shouted at the creature to pull itself together. He told the stunned monster to ignore everyone who had ever looked down on it. I even cried, and the harpies were touched by his unexpected encouragement. Ryan explained that self-pity only strengthens the belief that you cannot succeed, pushing the creature to finally believe in something good. He, filled with new confidence, proclaimed that he could do anything. And the harpy only looked back, completely speechless from his outburst of emotions. Suddenly Ryan was overcome with shame when he realized what he had just said. He was completely confused, trying to brush off his motivational speech. A small muffled laugh escaped from the harpy, and the creature giggled with relief and thanked him for his kindness. It quickly became clear it was not mocking him, seeing his embarrassment explaining that his unexpected words simply made her feel better. The harpy admitted that she was weak and that Ryan, the first person she met, was nothing like the one Lord Raju had described. It smiled, realizing that maybe people were not so bad after all. Ryan looked around. His determination, hardened by their conversation, became unshakable, and when the creature seemed to understand him, it agreed with his quiet determination. Ryan smiled confidently, indicating that they were on the same wavelength. The moment was cut short when he remembered that his mission asked what she was doing here. The sudden question completely caught the harpy by surprise. Just then 2 more monsters flashed by as if nothing had happened and casually mentioned the recent earthquake. And the heart seemed to nervously race because of their sudden appearance. Ryan knew he had to reach the end of the path, but was not sure how to proceed. He did not know how to convince these new monsters to let a human pass. Ryan was already about to resort to magic to escape, but suddenly the harpy offered her help as if she asked if he wanted her to lead him through the dangerous path in the cave. He had not yet answered when the creature picked him up in its arms, impatient to help. While the other monsters stood in shock, unable to believe their eyes and questioning the strange actions of the harpy. Soon they came across a dark passage where the earthquake shattered the stones of light, and while the harpy was worried about the darkness, Ryan was preparing to cast a spell. He clenched his fist, gathering his energy into a simple magical formula, and with just one word, he created glowing orbs that illuminated their path. The harpy was completely stunned by his simple but effective magic trick. They couldn't stop thinking, did all people possess such abilities? As they continued on their way, the creature was still delighted and praised Ryan's incredible magical talent. The mood soured when it looked at the berries and felt unnecessary in comparison. The harpy admitted that she was a weak coward who couldn't even fly to gather fruit. He tells how he is constantly scolded and mocked day after day because of failures. The creature dreamed of being as cool and incredible as his new human friend. Ryan's patience ran out. He shouted sharply at the harpy, "Listen." He explained that he had not always been so capable and that he still had many weak spots. And the harpy asked him what he does when he cannot manage on his own. Ryan simply raised 2 fingers, a gesture the monster did not understand. And he said forcefully, "If you can't manage alone, try to do it together." He offered to help the harpy gather berries as a token of gratitude for her advice, and the creature's face lit up with joy, gratefully accepting his kind offer. Ryan honestly admitted he could not just fly there, especially having only one arm. Suddenly he realized, if you throw a stone, the fruit will just be crushed. Suddenly an idea came to him. He asked if the harpy could cut branches with her feathers. The harpy flapped her wings with all her might, trying to launch a feather, but the attempt completely failed, and the creature broke down from defeat. Ryan looked closely at one of its large feathers, noticing how sharp it looked, and at that moment an idea was born in his head. The desperate harpy insisted that it was impossible, while Ryan was passing by her, and he began to scribble the formula on the ground. The harpy immediately noticed it, explaining that because of its size and lightness, this feather could become exactly what was needed for his plan. The puzzled creature asked what he had previously thought about her wing flap, and Ryan held the feather and whispered to her to imagine the desired result with all her might. He recalled the words of his master, "Simply wishing for something is never enough," explaining that in imagination you can fly as long as you want, at any moment. The harpy repeated his words, and the concept slowly began to reach her. Ryan then released his magic, cast the spell Formula 6 Levitation. He hurled the enchanted feather forward with incredible speed and force. With one clean movement, it cut through the thick branch holding the berries. The harpy could only watch, completely stunned, as the broken branch spun down and fell right into his open claws. It looked up in pure, delighted joy. It couldn't believe they really got the berries. And the creature thanked him fervently and sincerely, calling him a genius for their great achievement. But Ryan modestly turned away, insisting that he was not a genius. He explained that he learned from others to work as a team and to throw feathers. He gave all the credit to the harpy, saying it only worked because of her unique feathers. I told the creature that without her help, these berries could not have been gathered at all. Tears of joy sparkled in the harpy's eyes. She realized that this was her achievement. For the first time, the creature shone with true confidence and pride. Ryan suggested if they put the berries on the harpy's feathers, they could carry more. Suddenly, an idea struck him, and his eyes widened in a moment of insight as suddenly he noticed two small Kevil summons watching them from a hidden crack where one of the creatures recognized the fruit and noticed that it belonged to Kevil. Then the harpy turned around and thanked Ryan for his hints and help with the berries. It was a little embarrassed by the praise and tightly pressed one of the fruits to itself. Ryan smiled gently and warned the creature that it could become dangerous if other monsters saw them. In the harpy's eye, the awareness of the incredible risk they had dared to take was clearly visible. As they were preparing to part, he whispered to the creature, "Don't tell anyone that I am here." He stood silently by the harp while Ryan turned and left, leaving the cave behind. And suddenly a voice shouted a name from behind, "Ku Ku." The sound made Ryan turn around in confusion. The unexpected, unfamiliar noise threw him off balance. The harpy suddenly shuddered and realized that this name belonged to her. Kuku shyly asked the boy to say his name in exchange for sharing his own. Ryan paused for a moment, listening to the simple and sincere question of the creature. Kuku seemed to consider it a strange question, especially now that they were already walking. Ryan agreed. It clearly spoke his name when he was about to leave again, but he turned around with a warm smile and promised Kuku that this was not the end for them. Kuku froze completely at his words. Tears welled up in his eyes, and it spread its wings with happiness and eagerly agreed to meet Ryan again someday. Ryan moved further through the cave, as if recharged after that brief encounter, and he looked ahead with a sense of new purpose and quiet determination. Finally, he reached the end of the path. Kevil was standing there, patiently waiting for him. Ryan joked about the delay, but beneath his smile doubts still smoldered about Kevil's true plan. One of the creatures summoned by Kevil said, although it took time, it never doubted that Ryan would survive. Eva pointed at the feathers in Ryan's hands and asked with curiosity if they were from the Wind tribe. Ryan smiled and said that he avoided a fight and even got a souvenir from a good monster, but his expression changed for a moment. Doubt ran across his face. Kevil instantly caught that strange pause, as if posed as a question about his sudden hesitation, and Ryan sat and wondered if he was overthinking their situation. He shook his head in despair, trying to push away these tangled thoughts. Kevil asked if Ryan was hiding something about the conflict between their species. Ryan admitted that he wished they could all meet without a fight. Eva imagined a world where they could just calmly talk about magic. Before she fell silent, she waved it off, as if it was just a fleeting thought. Kuku berries lay on the ground next to the symbol of his recent encounter, and Kevil told Ryan that he thinks too much, trying to calm his restless mind. This prompted one of the little summoned ones to agree. He addressed Kevil and said he does the same. Kevil then asked if that was why Ryan had seemed so depressed earlier, but Ryan turned away and said that their chaotic meeting actually proved something important. Since they get along so well, their compatibility must definitely be perfect. He looked at them with a confident smile, as if challenging, "Was I wrong?" From that towering monster, he heard only a quiet chuckle in response, which looked down at the boy and softly spoke his name with a barely noticeable smile. Then stated that Ryan really is a weirdo, a very strange person, really weird. A strange person who somehow completely changed his entire outlook on the world. The smaller monster reproached Kevil for not simply calling Ryan a good guy directly, while Eve watched them and was happy to see them both having a good time. Their carefree moment was shattered when the cave began to shake violently again, and Ryan suddenly realized the earthquake was starting again, and it was warning everyone to be careful. Kevil announced that their destination was just ahead, and Ryan gathered his courage, ready to face any challenge that would come. The scene suddenly takes us back in time. Gene asks his companion if he is ready, and the young man named Chris confidently says he is ready for absolutely anything. Gene smiles and suggests sweating a little before the evening drink. They stand together before a strange triangular entrance carved into the rock wall. Chris draws on the ground with a magic marker right next to a small puddle. And the spell worked instantly. The water exploded in splashes, soaking everything around. His own mistake completely caught the young adventurer by surprise. Gene laughed at his failure, complained about his own clumsiness, and she teased him, saying that his little mishap just made her day, and that annoyed him terribly. He grumbled that he was not in the mood for this mission at all. She had just started walking. He reminded her that they were here to finally see Ryan after 3 years. Chris explained his anxiety. After all, they themselves had entered a dungeon designed for 4. Jean asked if he doubted her skills, but he immediately denied it, and then reminded her that she once admitted herself she had no chance here. He, with his heart in his throat, asked what she would do if they suddenly came across a real mummy. When the shot abruptly shifts to documents, they confirm that the monster's features match the mummy found 3 years ago. In the photo, a much younger Ryan who fought that creature alone and then disappeared for a week. Chris's eyes narrowed. A grim, serious determination flashed in them as he looked at the file. He was convincing Jean that the chance of encountering the mummy was much higher than finding Ryan. Jean just smiled, vowing to find her dear student at any cost. She closed her eyes, fully confident that their mission would inevitably end in victory. She poked, blushing, and boldly boasted that even a mummy was not scary for them together. Trying to change the subject, he got so flustered that he pushed her away. Chris asked Jean if she really thought that Ryan could have survived that long. They argued, insisting that the green newcomer could not possibly have made it so deep into the dungeon. He called Ryan's decision to throw a last-minute party completely and utterly reckless, and Jean twisted a smile and looked at him when he said that finding even the body would be a miracle. She then admitted that when it came to Ryan, she was not particularly his fan, and Chris nodded and said straight out that he really could not stand that guy at all. Both started throwing all his flaws in his face, calling him a stubborn and arrogant coward, and Jean began teasing Chris when he finally realized how much he truly could not tolerate Ryan. He brushed her off and told her to focus on the mission and be on alert instead of him. His face became serious. Felt that something was wrong. He anxiously noted that they had moved too far from the safe zone of the transfer markers. Jean noticed an alarming silence. There was not a single monster around. Suddenly she stopped in her tracks, and this completely caught Chris by surprise. He demanded to know what she was doing, confused by her sudden stop. She just smiled and explained, there are only 2 reasons for such silence. Either all the monsters in this zone have already been completely exterminated, or something so serious happened that they were forced to abandon their posts. Meanwhile, a group of monsters gathers around the campfire and wonders why the firewood hasn't burned. And a clawed hand reaches into the flames and without hesitation pulls out a burning log. A small creature prays to a being named Rajua, asking for strength. A sudden burst of power erupts from beneath the ground right in front of them. They desperately beg that great power which rules over life itself to come to their aid. From the whirlpool of chaotic energy emerges a huge dragon-like monster, and this creature, hissing curses, admits that it let its guard down for a moment. Smaller monsters gladly welcome the return of Lord Goldie, and he solemnly announces their next target, Kevil and Human Brat. Lord Goldie roared with irritation, demanding to know where his targets had gone. And suddenly a voice was heard, shouting, asking about that human brat he had just mentioned. A gloved hand held up a photograph of Ryan before him. Jean smiled slyly as she and Chris appeared and asked if this was the boy they were looking for. Goldie snapped back at them, threatening to burn them to ashes for their audacity, but she was not at all confused, pleased that she had so quickly found a reliable lead, nor knowing he would not cooperate, and offered a much faster way to get answers. This completely stunned Chris. Her aggressiveness and direct approach simply threw him off balance. He stepped forward and resolutely declared that he would handle the fight himself, because Ryan was already ahead. And Chris firmly told Jean not to waste her precious time on such a minor threat. Goldie exploded with rage. Chris's overly confident behavior drove him mad. In an instant, Chris closed the distance between them and then the massive monster roared, promising to turn him into coal. The creature suddenly froze. The boy was moving incredibly fast. Chris did not back down and decisively said that he was as fierce as the monster. He introduced himself as Christopher Alt and defiantly told the beast, "Don't compare me to some kid." Meanwhile, in the settlement of Toposhi, a new and unusual plan was taking shape, which their goal was a dark, ominous cave hidden just beyond the edge of the village, where the little creatures trembled because they knew, if the villagers found Ryan, everything would turn into real chaos. Kevil confidently said that now passing through this was child's play for them, and turned to his companion seeking confirmation. "Right, Ryan." Ryan stood with a stone expression on his face, wearing a wreath of flowers and berries on his head. Kevil proudly announced during one of his calls that his disguise was now completely perfect, but Ryan just looked back with a cold gaze, completely unimpressed by their ridiculous attempts. Kevil explained that thanks to his invisibility spell, no one would ever notice him. Although he agreed with the plan, he immediately noticed a serious flaw in the person Ryan sent. The summoned one explained that his scent was masked by plants and told him to stop complaining. Ryan impatiently asked Kevel if he remembered the spell pattern that was just shown to him. And Kevel explained that for him the finger positions were reversed and the lightning became invisible. But Ryan suddenly remembered an important detail that he completely forgot to mention. As Kevel asked if the lightning spell could be applied to living creatures, Ryan shouted hotly, "No." The summoned one thoughtfully asked if the spell was really that dangerous, and Ryan immediately confirmed it. He warned Kevel that he terribly controls his power, so this spell is a huge risk. Kevel said he understood the warning, but it was clear to everyone he was not aware of the danger at all. Another summoned creature sharply turned their attention, reminding Kevel that their current goal was invisibility. Kevel made hand gestures, preparing to cast a complex and heavy spell, as Ryan patiently stood completely still, covered in his funny floral camouflage. The spell worked. Ryan began to disappear before their eyes, and the summoned creature watched in delight until he completely vanished, leaving the little creatures absolutely stunned by the magic. Eva quietly confirmed the spell succeeded. Now she hears only his voice. Kevel then told the now invisible Ryan to climb onto his shoulder for the journey end. Ryan was already on board, and Eve urged them on because she did not know how much longer this magic would last. Ryan looked incredibly tense, doubting he could just lean back and enjoy the view, but he gathered his willpower and declared that they were finally ready to set off. Just as they were about to leave, a sudden crack made them flinch, and they both turned around to see what could have caused this unexpected noise. They were walking through a monster settlement, and Eve noticed that she would have to find better food for Ryan. When they were passing through the village, they were surrounded by small creatures that looked peaceful. And from his invisible place, Ryan admitted that the settlement turned out to be much less threatening than he had imagined. His eyes scanned, noting the strangely calm and ordinary scene around them. Enchanted, watching the little creatures peacefully sorting food and doing their daily chores while another monster was pulling a cart, just part of their usual daily routine. One of the beings even hung up laundry, a strangely homely and almost human sight. And a mother rabbit gently rocked a sleeping baby in her arms. Ryan realized that they were all just living, trying at all costs to attract someone's attention. And a small horned creature suddenly noticed a towering Kevel approaching them. This tiny monster called to him, respectfully addressing him as the guardian of graves, and Kevel casually asked if it needed anything, while Ryan worried that they had already been noticed. Two guards resembling Anubis appeared and asked if the recent earthquakes meant trouble from above. Ryan quietly wondered if a cuckoo lived nearby, but Kevel brushed off his worry and he quickly glanced over the village but found no one who looked like a harpy. Just then the winged creature tore from the sky with incredible speed, and Ryan only froze in shock when he realized it was a harpy. The Anubis guard immediately tensed, watching every move of the newcomers. When this harpy landed with a smug smile, it became clear that this was not the friendly cuckoo at all. Kevel's voice cut through the tension, ordering the invisible Ryan to retreat and hide, and small creatures confusedly obeyed the order, and Kevel understood the threat. The sharp claws of the harpies dug into the ground as it gave an icy command, and everything caught fire. It explained that in this way their targets would have no chance to escape. And one of its small winged summons unleashed a wild burst of fire from its staff, Khan. Having made sure that their target was not only Kevel, there must also be a human nearby. The harpy turned to Kevel with a self-satisfied smile and asked if it was correct. The Anubis guard approached the harpy, called her Fruge, and demanded to know her plan, but Fruge threw the question back, sharply accusing Kevel of letting a human in after Goldie's failure. It glanced at him intently, stating that his actions endangered the lives of all monsters, and the Anubis guards declared their duty was to stop this rebellion and destroy the human. Kevel sneered contemptuously at their words, challenging their distorted idea of order and peace. The Anubis guard angrily cut in, saying that he was the last one who should speak. The cat-summoned creature loudly accused him as if he were a hero, though he himself destroyed their homes, and behind Fruge quietly, ominously laughed at their words. The harpies smiled maliciously, twisting their words to make themselves appear guilty. His expression was filled with pure, unadulterated contempt for them all, dismissing all their arguments as complete nonsense. It was announced that creatures like Kevel, whose very existence was a mistake, have no right to judge, and Ryan listened, stunned, as Fruge decisively declared that everything about Kevel was wrong and had to be corrected. They shouted that in Lord Raju's world there was no place for either living people or corpses like him. So the winged Fruges calls Davin to a planned and brutal attack, but the Anubis guardian managed to block the approaching attack with a shadowy hand. The attack was relentless, leaving them nowhere to go and no place to retreat. and the harpy servants declared that there was no escape from their attack. The Anubis guardian mockingly taunted them from the ground, asking if it didn't annoy them to find themselves under fire from a height they could not reach at all. Rouge hovered above them, challenging them to see how long they would hold out. Kevel froze for a moment and without moving, just watched the chaos unfold before saying to the harpies, "Stay exactly where you are and do not come any closer." Then he unleashed a barrage of feathers. Each feather hit the flying creatures with perfect accuracy. One of the small summoned beings plopped to the ground, screaming in pain. The Anubis guardian seemed disappointed, noting that close range was not suitable for training, but suddenly an idea shot through his mind. This was the perfect chance to use magic while Ryan could not intervene. The summoned being froze in panic, afraid that the dangerous lightning spell from before would be tried again. The Anubis guardian looked up as sharp projectiles rained down from above, and Rouge mocked him because he was trying to imitate human techniques. He swore to strike so instantly that Kevel would not even have time to attack both. He loudly boasted that his Squall clan was simply unmatched in speed. One of his subordinates mockingly told the victim that all she could do was run. Suddenly, a precise projectile knocked him right out of the air. Rouge froze from the attack, wondering where those berries could have come from, and he looked down and saw how the Anubis guard was calling him from below. Ryan's voice scolded Kevel, "This is not the time to spam magic." Suddenly Rouge shuddered and realized there really was a person nearby. He frantically searched for where the voice was coming from, while Ryan told Kevel to be more tactical and the invisible boy asked if his distraction had bought them enough time. And the determined look made it clear that the plan was already in motion. Kevel suddenly appeared behind Rouge, clearly confirming that there was more than enough time. Kevel said that his companion was waiting, and the harpy was completely frozen in shock. And the cemetery guard announced that their little game was now officially over. Rouge lay broken on the ground, wings broken and completely useless. The Anubis guard told his summoned one that they needed to move, asking where Ryan was, but Rouge had not yet stopped cursing Kevel, calling him a scoundrel who rejects the flame. He rushed into a desperate final attack, shouting that he would never accept his call. Kevel's sudden movement completely caught his companions by surprise. The harpy pierced herself on the shadowy figure of Kevel, shouting, "Never," one last time. Dark claw passed right through Rouge's chest, delivering a fatal blow. With his last breath, he uttered Kevel's name in complete disbelief. One berry flew through the air like a silent witness to the cruel end, and when the harpy dealt the final blow, nothing remained around except dust. Ryan appeared again, pulling Kevel by the clothes to get his attention. While the small winged followers of Rouge cowered on the ground in horror, he begged the towering cemetery caretaker not to approach them. Kevel froze for a moment, looking down at the defeated and frightened creatures, but Ryan's hand clenched tighter and pulled him away from this place. He persistently urged his companion to forget about them and just keep going. He insisted that there was no longer any need to cause them pain, they would not pursue anyway. Kevel turned around in surprise, hearing such a merciful plea from a person, but Ryan did not back down. He said he meant every word. Later, Eva admitted that she never found the right moment to talk about it. They got up and without delay, told Ryan that they had finally reached the destination. Kevel stood before him, his numerous hands reaching out warmly, inviting him to a place called Conviction. He threw out a simple but troubling question into the air: what would Ryan do to restore his body without magic? This place is a convention where monsters begin and end, a place for desires. And the little summoner finally proved that Kevel was telling the complete truth. Ryan felt a strange unease, as if this place was nothing like anything he had seen before. The feeling that overwhelmed him resembled a cemetery filled with countless stone coffins. They stepped into a huge cavernous hall filled with countless stone slabs. The scale of the underground cemetery was simply overwhelming. Kevel explained that after patrolling he had left a few things scattered, and Ryan's eyes widened as he realized what his companion was talking about. When the lid of the neighboring stone coffin began to shift by itself, one of the summoned creatures sadly noted that it had not been home for a long time. Then Kevel's shadowy hand lifted the heavy stone lid with incredible ease. Ryan watched as Eva, summoned by Kevel, sat among the stone slabs. He told him that she was so glad she could finally return home here to this place. The summoned one, resembling Anubis, joyfully called his older brother who stood nearby, while Eva proudly showed off those little flowers she had planted here long ago. Anubis's summoner hoped that other flowers would bloom just as beautifully. And Eve explained, this place is incredibly important for all of them. Ryan stepped forward, calling Kevel, and felt the growing unrest, and he asked his partner what was supposed to happen here at all. The little summoned creature just looked at him and gave no answer to his question. The voice explained that if they just sat and waited, nothing would happen. Kevel told Ryan, everything will be decided only between the two of us. Ryan froze in shock and demanded to know why Kevel had hidden that he could fix his hand. Kevel Salmon looked with surprise at the sharp and accurate conclusion of the boy. Ryan did not back down. He wanted to hear everything and demanded to know every reason from Kevel. Kevel knelt before him and sincerely admitted that his quick understanding helped a lot, and explained that they had little time, so he would get straight to the point. It turned out that right here, in convection, there is a way to restore Ryan's hand. He said that it is much easier than looking for a solution in already existing magic. But whether he would reveal the method, everything depended on Ryan's response to what he was about to say. Ryan sat down, determination growing stronger within him, and he said that he had already decided, and he said resolutely, no matter what happens, he would continue to believe in Kevel. When everything was settled, he finally blurted out the first question: what is the convention really? Kevel explained that it is a cemetery where the bodies of dead monsters are brought, and Ryan's eyes widened as he realized that his early eerie feeling of a graveyard was correct. Kevel confirmed Ryan's suspicion with one solemn word. It turned out that he was a soul that had inhabited a monster's corpse, a walking corpse. Ryan was completely stunned by this. He could not believe that such a thing was even possible. And Kevel admitted that the body moving without its original soul was indeed an anomaly. He explained that even among monsters, those like him were treated as outcasts. Others feared and spat on them, calling their very existence wrong. But instead of falling into despair, Kevel simply found the whole situation interesting, an interesting question. He challenged the laws of the world that rejected him, and with passionate determination sought to understand everything. He explained that acquiring knowledge was vital to protect his family from the hostile world end. And in the very midst of war, he decided to defeat Raja, the king of monsters. Ryan suddenly realized that this goal had been set long before he even appeared on the scene. When Kevel described how Raja, a gigantic monster, summoned monsters to exterminate humanity, and almost no one dared to challenge his rule except Kevel's people. He could not understand why monsters and humans could not simply live together in peace. Believing that this endless war ultimately benefits no one truly, he decided that the only way out was to cut out the source of the conflict, but while he was still shaping his plans, humans were the first to manage to defeat Rajua. Kevel froze in shock. He realized that against the incredible power of the king, he had no chance at all. Since then, the balance between humans and monsters was destroyed. His little summoned one trembled, recalling those hard and bloody times that came after that. When humans delved deeper underground, Kevel had no choice. He had to fight to protect his home. It was during these battles that he quickly learned an important lesson when he first saw with his own eyes that new power that humanity had gained. In memory, the magic of the younger Jean proves useless against him because, forcing the younger Chris to give the order for a full retreat, openly admitting that they could not win. He remembered how he was struck by the human's technique and wondered if it was also magic. This ability affected him so much that with each day the desire to possess it only grew. But after that encounter, humans did not return for a very long time. And he dreamed that with such power he could even defeat the monster King Rajua. In the present, his summoner suddenly became frightened by something invisible. While he continues the story, a familiar wizard's hat suddenly appears in his memory. It was then that he finally met Ryan for the first time. He knew it was a once-in-a-lifetime chance. He could not miss it. And Ryan, enraged, realized that Kevel had arranged their first fight just to find out about magic. Ryan complained that he was afraid of accidentally killing Kevel, who was completely unrestrained. And he later apologized for being such a reckless fool who did not care about his own safety at all. Kevel continued, looking at this reckless boy. He finally decided. He decided to unite with Ryan, and together they would change the world. Ryan listened in stunned silence, trying to grasp this incredibly grand statement. Kevel explained that to do this, he needed to restore Ryan's hand. That was exactly why he brought him here. However, he admitted that there was one serious problem in his grand plan. The fact that Ryan was his friend did not automatically make him an ally of all monsters. And he feared that as soon as Ryan recovered, he might turn against other monsters, not just against Rajua. Kevel later recalled how a huge boulder separated them. Ryan realized that he was deliberately left alone to see if he would resort to violence. The summoned spirit chimed in, well, obviously Ryan just wants to smash that stone with magic. And another admitted that he almost stopped Ryan when he was heading straight to the patrol route just to cast a spell. But in the end, Ryan did reach the convent and did not hurt anyone. Kevel knelt before him and asked if he understood how important this act was for By declaring this, he thereby decided that Ryan had everything needed to become the savior of this world. Kevel warned that they could not stay here, long time was running out. They proposed to defeat Rajua and create a world where everyone could live in peace. He offered to heal Ryan's hand here and now if he agreed to join his cause. Ryan was completely stunned by that huge offer, which could change the whole world. He honestly admitted, faced with such an incredibly magnificent phenomenon, he simply did not know what to say. He had never even thought about changing the world and simply could not come to terms with it. He finally explained why he so desperately wanted to return his hand and defeat Rajua. Clenching his fist, he admitted that his motives were entirely selfish. He just wanted to do something incredible so that people would finally praise him. The memory begins with someone knocking on young Ryan's door and an older man with a warm smile asks him to help prepare the shop for the start of the day. I told him not to worry about the plate he broke, that happens all the time. But Ryan said to the man in a stone-cold voice never to ask him for anything again. The man was left looking hurt and confused by the boy's sharp refusal. Ryan just wanted to be left alone so that no one would bother or mock him, but then he met his master and discovered a magic that turned his whole world upside down. He became obsessed with the idea that he had to do everything himself to become stronger. And this growing impatience threw him off the path, pushing his friends away. And so he set off on a lonely path, convinced that there was simply no other way forward. Until he found himself in a desperate situation that he could not handle alone. And it was then that Kevel appeared. He reached out his hand and led him through the darkness. Returning to the present, Ryan admitted that he understood Kevel's purpose and wanted to help. As the small summoned creature listened carefully to his confession, full of emotion and pain. But he shouted that a person who had thought only of himself all his life still could not save the world. Yet he confessed, saving the world sounds incredible, even if he cannot imagine himself as a hero. He thought that if he saved the world, everyone would finally praise him. But he could not even imagine success. He knew he was simply too weak. He told Kevel that a person like him could never live up to such high expectations. Kevel's response was a single unexpected word hanging in the air: wonderful. He praised Ryan, saying that the guy had once again managed to exceed his expectations, and Ryan was completely confused and could not understand at all why Kevel reacted so positively. Kevel explained that Ryan's acknowledgement of his weakness was exactly what he wanted to hear, because it meant that there was a chance for him to grow even stronger than he is now. The conscript added that this desire to become better is a sign of someone who can bring change, and Kevel insisted, being weak is not a problem, the main thing is to have the will to change. Ryan insisted that surely there is someone stronger and better suited for this matter, but Kevel interrupted him and decisively said that there was no one else. He told Ryan that he was forgetting something incredibly important about their connection, reminding him that the two of them were perfect for each other. He even threw Ryan's own words from that previous conversation back at him, and Ryan finally laughed quietly, breaking through his wall of doubts. He took Kevel's hand, admitting that with him, maybe it really was possible after all. The little summoned creature watched, feeling a spark of hope for the future. Ryan felt his confidence return when he said that Kevel was nearby. He was not afraid when in a lightning-fast movement, Kevel's head suddenly separated from his body. The boy could only freeze in complete horror, watching the sudden brutal attack on his. His mind struggled, trying to comprehend the impossible sight that appeared before his eyes. One of the summoned noticed the attacker, who seemed to be looking for them. Nearby descended a large winged creature with sharp claws. Luckily, they had not gone far. When the wing opened, it was visible that it had poorly healed, and this explained why it bypassed all the proper procedures to end up here. While Ryan screamed in absolute disbelief, unable to comprehend what had just happened. And the ominous voice mocked and asked why he was so confused by the attack, and the harpy mockingly declared that he could think about it only after his death.